My name is Michael Guyad, publisher of the Lead Lag Report. Joining me for the hour is the stock mom herself, Amanda, who had been going back and forth with a bit as far as topics. Very much appreciate the positive nature of the way she engages. So, Amanda, introduce yourself to the audience and to me. Talk about who you are, your background. It doesn't sound to me like you started off necessarily in the field of trading and investing.
Well, first and foremost, I'm very glad to be here. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak on your platform, Michael. I am very excited because I listen to your podcast like all the time. Like, I don't always get to be in the spaces. You'll see me pop in a lot throughout the days. But right now, I've been doing like gig apps like Shipped and Instacart and stuff, just kind of working on building my account. So, like, in between deliveries, it's great to listen to. But anyway, yes, I'm Amanda, but everyone knows me as Mom, Stock Mom. Primarily hang out on Twitter for the market. I've kind of like hung out in Discords and stuff in the past, but Twitter just kind of has a soft spot in my heart because it's kind of like the platform that blew up for me at the right time during the 2021 craziness. But also, I don't know, there's just something about it. There's a lot of people who are kind of nefarious, I guess, or maybe not intentionally, or confusing, or frustrating, or trolling, or fake. We deal with it all the time. But anyway, because of that, I kind of like hanging out there in this space because I kind of like when people are antagonizing, because I kind of, one, like to throw truth at them, and two, I kind of like it for the same reasons you do, Michael. Sentiment. It's huge. But yeah, I have quite the story, I guess. When it comes to the markets, we'll keep it kind of short and sweet. I ended up kind of falling into the market back in 2020. We had all that money. We were on lockdown. It was like, just like, okay, well, I have extra money. I've never really had extra money. I bet you if I were to do something with it in the stock market, it'd probably be a good time to buy stocks because I was smart enough to understand that the world had shut down. I figure, okay, so stocks would probably be cheaper. So I made my first purchase like on and just like on like a investing app. It wasn't active trading. I had no idea even how to look at like charts really. But I saw United Airlines was a pretty good price, and I figure, oh well, people aren't going to be flying. That's probably a good price. Maybe it'll come back around. And I put $100 in there. Kind of casually looked at it. About a year goes by, and I'm checking it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's up like 300%. What the heck? And like I'm feeling like the best trader in the world right now. I'm like, this is so easy. Little did I know, but so that kind of piqued my interest. I love that I took money and I made it into more money. And so it was just like this, I could do this. I love this. But yeah, so it started there and I just kind of started hearing about the meme stock thing in 2021. I was like, what are people talking about? What is this like GME? What is this AMC thing? I don't know. But then like, they're sharing those pictures of more complicated charts to me at the time. I was like, where are they even looking at this? What is active trading? And anyway, so I fell down the rabbit hole. I made my first trade on GME, and it was during March 2021 when things got crazy. I mean, the markets are just exploding. I made my first $500 like that. And like, I don't know, I guess I got obsessed ever since, kind of started building my position on AMC. There was a lot of money to be made in 2021. I made a lot of money. I lost a lot of money, and I'm just kind of going from there. But I could get more into why the market speaks to me and what I like about it. But I don't know. We'll just start there.
Yeah, no, that's a good place. Okay, so I had never really been familiar with Discord until I saw all the, I'd say it this way, but kind of scammers, pumping and dumping and referencing their own Discords. Educate me a little bit on this, Amanda. Sort of the difference in terms of the demographic of those that look for investment ideas or talk about stocks on Discord versus the demographics on Twitter.
Well, it just depends. On Discord, it can be a little more like you're in a smaller group with more people that you're going to talk to on a regular basis. Maybe they're not being as judgmental because there's not as many people in the group, or it's set up in a way to be more supportive. but I've also heard of other ones that are just like atrocious, using your word, Michael. It really depends. But I found it kind of overwhelming. I mean, a lot of the people who end up in Discord a lot, I tend to refer to them as the bros a lot, the trading bros. I don't know. It's a lot of the newer age, traders, and I get it. I'm kind of in that same crowd, but I guess I've kind of, I don't know, separated myself a little bit, I guess, from that. But it's a lot of you see some of the similar people you see on Twitter, like that's really arrogant and think they know everything, and they want to get really caught up in their bias. But I don't know. Discord, I like it, but I also don't. I don't know. It's kind of confusing to me, so that's also why I don't like it. But Twitter's just like less private, I guess. And I kind of like that. I like that it's public because I'm not hiding anything. It's if it can be talked about, I want to talk about it with a lot of people. So for me, it's just kind of a reach thing.
And presumably, there's also, again, not that I'm speaking from experience, but I'm going to assume that there's a lot more desire to be anonymous on Discord, whereas at least with Twitter, you can choose to be anonymous, but there are a lot of real people, and you can actually look up their credentials.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that because, like, on Discord, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like Reddit, same thing. A little more anonymous. You don't really know who you're talking to. You don't know if they're actually who they say they are, and you see that on Twitter. But I don't know. I just feel like it's easier to vet people on Twitter who are more active than, say, on just some private Discord.
Okay, so that word vet, I think, is worth focusing on, given that again, you came in as a newer trader. How do you even know what information to vet, who to follow, who to not follow? When you don't have sort of a core foundation at the start, and you're getting involved, kind of baptism by fire. You don't know if the person that's throwing you in really knows what they're talking about to begin with. So how did you go about that process in the beginning?
Oh, well, that's kind of funny you bring that up. So, just like everybody else, I was subject to the same emotions as many people feel, and during different cycles of the market or different phases of the cycle of the market. It's kind of interesting. Like, I've learned so much in such a short amount of time. It's like taking my mindset back there already. It's kind of hard. But I do remember I used to get caught up in it a lot easier. It was when there's euphoria going on, or, all that irrational enthusiasm. I mean, it's like everybody loves each other, everybody's super friendly, you're gaining followers like crazy, everyone's making money or believing they're making money, right? A lot of those games don't get realized. But it's like peace, love, money, the world's changing, everything's going to be different. And in the moment, it really does feel that way. And I definitely was prone to believing some of those things. I mean, when I first kind of got into the active trading space, the way I went about that was, well, YouTube. I'm like, there's got to be somebody on here who knows what's going on, right? Someone's got to tell me what's going on. And that was the thing. Even though it's clear that maybe these people that I was learning off of originally were not that experienced, they did give me at least the basis of the knowledge I needed. Like, okay, what is bearish and bullish? What's hawkish and dovish? Why does the Fed matter? It was fascinating to me when I was really just trying to figure out how this whole market trading thing works. You look up on Google, and I mean, it's like so much. It's like information overload. You just want someone to tell you, just like, okay, what app do I download? What do I need to do? Like, how do I do this? Like, just make it simple. But the truth is, it's just not simple. And everybody has a different way of going about it. So I guess the biggest thing was just I need somebody to just say, okay, this is kind of the gist of what happens and how things flow. And then from there, I just kind of jumped off and started learning. I'm the kind of person who has like a billion questions about everything all the time. So I will just look it up, and I will read, and I will research, and I will do all these things till I understand it, because I don't like explaining things to other people if I don't understand them really well myself. Um, so yeah, in the beginning, it was just really easy. It was really easy just to get caught up in that. But actually, I've come to find that going from a bull market to a bear market, I actually kind of like it. Well, it's not as easy to make money in these conditions. I like that I can tell who's real and who's not a lot more. um, But it is hard if you don't have a good understanding of what an honest person looks like compared to a dishonest person. It's really hard to tell the difference.
And it's probably especially hard also when there's almost this kind of us versus them mentality that I think is pretty pervasive in the discourse of the world, the FinTwits of the world. Yeah, where you have a lot of younger folk who are, let's call it, frustrated, angry at sort of the vision of what Wall Street is almost kind of like I forget that movement that was taking place, Occupy Wall Street, right? You have that kind of mentality digitally online, and while there is validity to a lot of the sentiment there, the truth is, if you're going to try to educate yourself, the people that know how things work are those very people that often get villainized, rightly or wrongly, right? So, there's, to your point, sort of the aspect of needing to know what sources to go to, but also not get caught up in the narrative that you shouldn't listen to what these people in quotes have to say about markets and how they work because they're the bad guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was huge, and it still is to an extent. But like in the beginning, before I really kind of understood how markets really work and how they're made in the first place, it's easy to believe, okay, the little guy is winning, and that's why the market is exploding right now. But then I came to realize, okay, maybe it's not, because it used to feel like, okay, we got to recruit more people, we got to get on board. And in some regards, when things were squeezing and going crazy, I mean, I guess retail moves could have amplified the day-to-day movements, but I've come to realize, oh yeah, it's like not quite so simplistic, and I've realized that, well, we all kind of want to be on a team, and we all want to, like, yeah, we want to stick it to the man all together. At the end of the day, trading is such an individual thing. At the end of the day, it's just you and your account and your decisions. And yeah, that is a really difficult thing for a lot of people, especially because a lot of people don't like to do things alone, or they don't even really know how to make decisions for themselves. So yeah, it is a really fascinating dynamic.
You mentioned that in the beginning you didn't even necessarily look at charts, which I think a lot of newer traders, that's sort of the first thing and maybe even the last thing that they look at because everyone, as I like to kind of point out, loves those squiggly lines, right? Because the mind needs something to anchor onto to make a decision, and when you can visualize it based on something that you can draw yourself, you can argue it creates maybe a false sense of confidence. But talk about sort of the evolution of how you went from not knowing what to analyze and what tools to use to what you do now.
I guess I found it fascinating. For me, it was like a big puzzle, I guess. The market still is to this day. I guess you could say I get prone to boredom. So I guess go back to my story a little more. So to understand why I like the market so much, I guess you gotta have to understand my background. So I've talked about, where I came from. I'm a domestic abuse survivor. Um, I divorced back in, gosh, it's 2019. Yeah, 2019. And so before all of that happened, I was a young mom almost mom. I was 18, got married right out of high school to my boyfriend in high school at the time. And we were super unprepared, super emotionally immature, didn't know what we were doing. Had a baby a year later, was a mom at 19. And, life just hit us really hard. We didn't know what we were doing. We both came from dysfunctional families. And life isn't easy, especially when you're not prepared. And so as time went on, life got harder. Things happened. My ex's mom, she passed away when he was about 20. And that was devastating. I don't think he was ever right after that moment. And then as, finances got worse, life got harder. We weren't really going anywhere in life. He fell into addiction. He had been really financially abusive over the years. I mean, there was times in my life where I had no idea how I was going to pay bills. I had no idea how I was going to pay for dinner. I had no idea how I was going to pay for shampoo. I mean, just all the basics. It was really hard. Um, and I don't know. It was when you're in that situation and you're hearing like really negative messages all the time. My ex was super emotionally and verbally abusive. You just, I don't know, you just start to give up, I guess, and you just kind of get used to it. So I kind of got used to living in what's called fight or flight. And this is something that actually helps me in the market. When you're dealing with a stressful situation or anxiety, or you feel like you're in danger, or even when you're not in danger, sometimes we're overreactive and we end up in our fight or flight a lot. That's like our sympathetic nervous system. It basically turns off everything in your body except for the things that matter, like, getting your heart pumping and getting you to run faster because the adrenaline's pumping. Your digestive system, it's turning off. It's you're just in fight or flight. You're not using the front of your brain, which is your frontal cortex, which is your planning and judgment, right? So when you're in that state, you're not going to make good decisions. You're not thinking it through. So like I lived in that state for almost 10 years, me and my ex were married for about 9 years. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I just stayed in it because I thought it was the right thing to do. I didn't know any better. I didn't believe in myself. I thought I wasn't smart. I thought I wasn't capable of things. Um, and when I look back at it, it's kind of funny. I mean, it's not funny. It's all really sad, but it's funny that I didn't believe in myself because my ex, he was he was a narcissist. We'll put it that way. He was textbook narcissist. I didn't know what a narcissist even was when I was in my relationship. It wasn't until after everything had fallen apart that I found Facebook groups about narcissistic abuse, and it kind of freaked me out because I was like, this is identical to what I went through. What the heck? But yeah, I was abandoned by him, and me and my kids were abandoned back in 2018, I think. I don't know. It's like weird. Trauma is weird. Like it all kind of runs together. But yeah, he just took off. And so I had to pick up the pieces of my life with no money. I was on the verge of being evicted. I sold furniture and got it all out. I sold everything I owned, paid that off, moved to my mom's house in like 2 days. And it was just a whirlwind. But that was like the scariest thing that could ever happen to me. So now not a whole lot scary anymore, I guess. But yeah, because I've been through all of that, because of that, the market is important to me because I lived in a world where opportunity didn't exist. I had just kind of given up on the idea that life would get better. It was just always like, maybe we can just be stable. Maybe I could just pay my bills. Maybe I can just eat dinner tonight. Now it's like, oh my gosh, I could make more money than I need for my bills. I can save money. I can grow money. Like that is mind blowing to me. So for me, the market represents like infinite opportunity. And not having opportunities like felt like almost like you just want to die, honestly. I mean, it's just like, what's the point? So if the market gives me purpose and it makes me feel like I can find freedom in my life, because money to me is freedom.
I always hesitate when people call themselves survivors, because I think if somebody is a survivor, the better word to use is, you're a fighter, right? I mean, you have to be a fighter to survive, and I think the framework of being a fighter is a very powerful one, right? In a world where there are a lot of odds stacked against people in different ways, and I commend you for being where you're at now. Um, do you think that in that period, which obviously was very difficult and painful, that it does it result in a degree of, for lack of a better way of saying it, numbness? And I say that from the perspective that I do think that if you're going to be successful as a trader, you have to almost have a degree of numbness, because you're going to have loss. Now, loss monetarily is different than loss in far more serious domains of life. But the reality is you do need to have that sort of almost Zen-like approach that you can take it because you've taken worse.
Oh, absolutely. I look at that. I look at it all the time like that. For at least for me, it's like, again, like I said, I've lived through what I think is this. I thought was like the most horrible, life-ending things that could ever happen to me. And so, like for me, losing money, it's like it sucks. I kind of get in a bad mood about it sometimes, but but that I process it and I move on. I can let it go at the end of the day. Um, and I would agree with that. You do have to have like this level of zen. Like you just have to realize, okay, it will be okay. If I lose this money, it doesn't mean that I'm a bad trader. Doesn't mean that the world ends. It doesn't mean that I'm on the street, right? It just means it was a bad trade, or it. I just need to do some more research, I guess, or maybe it will turn back around. But today, I don't need to sit here and stress on it because, I mean, what's the point? It's just not good for me.
Well, I think, and I think it's also about perspective, right? It's. I often find it a little bit bizarre on FinTwit when people seemingly get very down about a particular trade, or very excited about a particular trade, and it's like, yeah, it's cliche to say it's only money, but the reality is, in the grand scheme of things, a particular trade is really meaningless in the context of living life.
Absolutely. Actually, I'll share a little more of my ex's story a little bit to kind of touch on this. So, yeah, a lot of people have their mindsets backwards when it comes to money. A lot of people think money is like a flex, I guess. They look at it like money is the end all be all. If I have nice things, or if I have the best car, or if people think I'm the coolest person because I have nice name brand clothes or shoes or whatever, they think that that will somehow fulfill them. My ex is a perfect example of that. He grew up in dysfunction in Malibu, California, of all places. His family was not from money, but he had some family members who had money. But he kind of grew up with this entitlement, and he really had no reason for the entitlement other than he just believed that people would think better of him if the image was right. So it was always with our family, it was always like look good to everybody else, but it didn't really matter what was happening on the inside, right? And it just felt like such an empty place to be, but you get so lost in it. Um, and my ex, he fell deeper and deeper and deeper into addiction, and he would spend all our money on, opioids, and he would just and waste it on on things to make himself look cooler. Well, for instance, I co-signed on a sports car for him. It was like a used one, but it was way more money than we could even afford at the time. But I was so tired of him complaining at me. I just, when you're in those dynamics, you just do it. And I just did it. And to this day, I have no idea where that car is. It's gone. I will never get it back. I still pay money on that car. But anyway, image was everything to him. Like he had no substance. It was really sad. When you would get to the core of him, it was just hate, anger, sadness. And when I say hate, I don't mean hate for me. He had hate. He would show hatred towards me, but I mean, he hated himself more than anyone I've ever met. It was the saddest thing. And so when he took off to California, left me and the kids in the middle of polar vortex in Michigan, uh, he took off in that sports car, and I didn't realize it at the time, but the reason he had left is because when a relative had passed, he had been given a trust of $3,500, and so he was just going to take off and go live his life, I guess. And it's sad because he had everything that he thought he wanted. He had he went and he blew all that money. I mean, he wasted it on new clothes, new tattoos. I mean, he bought a new car. He was dating a bunch of new young girls, all kinds of crazy stuff. Oh, but he was miserable, and it got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse. His family didn't know what to do with him. And it's very sad to share this, but he ended up dead. He passed away in 2020, 2 weeks before his 28th birthday. And money did not make up for all the things that he had going on inside of himself. And I mean, it didn't matter. Money didn't give him freedom. Money didn't help him find happiness. Money didn't make him a better person. So I mean, the truth at the end of the day, the moral is money can't replace brokenness inside of us. And actually, if we are struggling with some sort of brokenness, we're going to have a hard time holding on to money, managing money, having a good mindset towards money. So, I mean, like for me, seeing my ex's descent and into life, I mean, like that was just so impactful. I realized so much about, what matters and what doesn't.
Just to reset the room for everybody that's here, please make sure you follow Amanda on Twitter, inspiring the way she fought through those struggles in that time in her life to do what she's doing now. She deserves a lot more follows here on Twitter, so please support her. If anybody wants to come up and ask questions, click that bottom left mic request button. And as always, this will be an edited podcast on all your favorite platforms. Okay, so let's go back to the sort of self-learning part on the trading side. So you talked about how you kind of gravitate towards markets because it's about opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity to do things right, and a lot of opportunity to do things wrong. Talk about some of the mistakes that you made earlier on in your trading career, and what you did to maybe improve on those mistakes with future trades.
Well, the biggest mistake I made from day one was worrying about what everybody else is doing, worrying about what everybody else thinks, trying to do what the crowd is doing. And it's so funny because now I realize that in doing what the crowd's doing, that's usually like not even the right choice. But again, in the market's weird like that. You don't always know. But generally speaking, you want to make trades that are less popular because the market likes to change direction when too many people are in something. Um, you know, in the beginning, I also used to play options a whole lot more. And I'd make a lot of money on those options, but man, it was hard to keep those gains. Or another one was just too many positions at one time, getting overconfident and thinking, you have a couple really great trades and then next you just think you're going to keep trading every single day. Now I realize I got to stop looking at it like, you got to look at every trade individually. You can't be like on a streak and just trade, trade, trade. I mean, some people can, but generally speaking, that's how you get hurt. No, I've gotten hurt. I find the market to be a lot like kind of like my kids, a toddler touches a hot stove or you tell a toddler not to touch the hot stove, they don't know why. They ignore you, they touch the hot stove, they cry. You give them a hug and you say, well, yeah, and now you know why I said not to touch it. It burns. And guess what? They don't touch the stove again. So I'm learning that experience kind of is king in the market as long as you're somebody who is willing to reflect on your mistakes and look back at what you did and back test things and see if it actually worked or not. I mean, even like we look at the Fed and this whole Fed tightening cycle, and everybody's got a different opinion on retail, I should say. Everybody in retail has a different opinion on it. A lot of people think it's massively bullish. And I will admit, I kind of believe that too, until you kept saying, fear the pivot. And I was like, what is he talking about? And so then I did my research and I was like, oh my gosh, every time the pivot happened, we dropped. Okay, there was a lot of lows that came after the pivot. So kind of realizing that the crowd doesn't always have right, especially on Twitter. Just because someone is popular doesn't necessarily mean they know what the heck they're talking about.
Yeah, listen, I mean, the reality is popularity in on FinTwit and in life is largely confirmation bias, right? I mean, if you're a big fan of Bitcoin and there's a lot of other big fans of Bitcoin, you're going to follow those big accounts that do nothing but talk about Bitcoin, right? I mean, you're not going to have big accounts necessarily that throw out differing opinions, right? Because that's not how you get popular. And listen, as much as I tweet and maybe obnoxious purposely on FinTwit, most of the things I say most purposely, most of the things that I put out are based on actual data and back testing, and you have to kind of frame things, I think, in a way to get people to pay attention, right? Data is one thing, but putting aggressive wording is a whole nother in terms of sort of virality. So, I appreciate you mentioning that point. Since you mentioned retail, I always have a problem with the idea and the framing of smart money versus dumb money, which you often hear in traditional media, right? Dumb money, in quotes, being retail, smart money being everybody else. And it's, to me, it's not about being smart or dumb because nobody can tell the future. It's not about intelligence, right? But what do you think speaking of the popular narrative gets right and wrong about the retail community, since you really are coming from a place of being a part of it, from the Discord side to the Twitter side to trading your own portfolio?
Well, I think that they get the intelligence level wrong. Yes, there are a lot of loud, not so smart retail people, um, but that's not all of us. And I think I would argue that nowadays retail's probably smarter than they've ever been because we have information at our fingertips, right? Information moves faster than it ever has. It's more available than it's ever been. I mean, the fact that I can even just like connect with you or, in this space and we can talk about this from our own homes where, all over the world doesn't even matter. I mean, that's huge. We didn't used to be able to have this collaboration in the past. In fact, I love hearing from you, Michael, and the people you bring up who are more seasoned and experienced and been in this for years and years and decades, because I love hearing how different it was then. And I mean, I would love to have experienced it, I think, just because, going out onto a floor in real life, I mean, that's not retail necessarily, but I'm just talking, even everybody's trading careers, everything has changed. Technology has changed everything. And I think that's also what's drawing me into the market. And during this particular period is one, I mean, I came in when I came in, but I also am not afraid to talk about what I'm thinking or what I'm researching because I see that for a lot of even seasoned people, there's a big learning curve. Things have changed a lot. So it's kind of nice. We're all kind of learning a lot of stuff together in some ways.
Yeah, well, I'll take it a step further. I mean, and this admittedly has been sort of my own curse as somebody who's an entrepreneur that launched different strategies, I believe, at the wrong time, but others will cynically say that that's just an excuse. You know, the smallest sample, which can be just even be measured in years, right? I mean, I always go back to 3, 4, 5 years is a small sample of time, even though it feels like forever. But in the context of long cycles, right? That's really nothing. Um, in the small sample, if you're going to develop some kind of trading strategy based on that large data, but if in the small sample it doesn't work, it becomes really challenging, right? Mentally, emotionally, financially, because you know what your research would suggest. You know that not everything works at all times, including buy and hold, right? You know that there are cycles, but at the same time, here is social media, here's FinTwit, and here's that large account that seemingly is killing it based on going into Pepe as the meme coin of the day. So it really does get to be, I think, a lot more difficult when you actually take a step back from social media and look at data, and then figure out that it's more than just, to your point, those with large followings, those that are intelligent, non-intelligent. It's also about finding, your cadence in a cycle that may or not favor your cadence, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I think that, I mean, maybe it's just like a lot of the FinTwit community, or I don't know if this is just retail but you've mentioned it before. Everyone's become so short-sighted, I guess. Everything they want plays to be instant almost. And when I look back at charts and I've looked at data myself, I'm like, yeah, it doesn't always work out like that. In fact, I've gotten hurt being short-sighted like that too. And I think sometimes just because data moves so fast, people expect time to move like that. When I was younger, I used to be into gaming and stuff. I played online games as kind of a nerd as a teenager. Um, and it's funny to me, there's a lot of similarities, I guess, to gaming and the market. And we don't have to get into the gamification stuff, but I just mean like just how people think. It was funny, like when you would play online games, like something that happened in one day would feel like 3 months. People would get in their little fake online relationships or whatever, and they'd be like done in like maybe 3 weeks because that was like a long time. Things kind of explode and fall really quick in on internet time, I guess. But I think that's just because, again, everything moves so fast. It feels like time is moving faster, but it's not. um, and so, yeah, I think that people kind of, they want instant gratification. They want to make money now. They don't have a concept of long term. Well, and then I'm also noticing that myself, like being in this cycle from the 2020, and now we're here and we're kind of in that weird transitional phase. Is it going to fall more? Are we going to start a new cycle soon? Are we in a new cycle? No one really knows. Where was I going with that? I just lost my train of thought. Sorry.
No. The instant gratification is the biggest problem, right? And it's like I don't know how that gets countered because and I know you kind of allude to gamification, but the reality is all that reinforces the short termism because it makes everything about the short term dopamine hit of a particular trade going up or down. When in reality, this is a long game.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm starting to realize that more and more as I've gotten more experienced, as I've lost some money, yeah, you just kind of shift. But also it's that experience. I wanted to understand it. I read like crazy. I would read things like over and over and over, like trying to understand it, read it out loud. But it's like until you've experienced it, you don't really understand. Like somebody during the peak of 2021 and the motions and all the money you're making, it doesn't feel like it's ever going to end. And I'm seeing right now here in this kind of like complacency period, I mean, it feels kind of like it's never going to end. But reality and in history tells us otherwise, right? So there's kind of like this disconnect between your emotions and reality. And that's tough because I would argue that the majority of maybe a lot of people nowadays don't really know the difference between rationality and feeling. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad to know that my pain can be something positive. So that means a lot.
Let's talk about the importance of skepticism for a few minutes here. Again, it's when you're kind of a blank slate entering a new field, you're excited about it, you have some early success, you're seeing other people being successful, and over time you start getting a little bit jaded, a little skeptical about what other people are saying, about the way markets work. Um, for you, what are some of the warning signs when it comes to uh, what kind of stocks to consider buying or selling, or even if it's on the option side, how short term the expiration should be? I mean, th- I think the problem is a lot of people enter the field thinking it's going to be fast money quickly, big money quickly, and in reality, it's not. So you need to be a bit skeptical of the idea that you can make a lot of money fast.
You do. I mean, like, I think skepticism is good in the market in general. I think I didn't have enough of it in the beginning, and I think that's just normal. I think we kind of don't know what we're doing at first. We kind of believe everybody at first. But yeah, it's gotten to the place now where it's like if someone's saying something and I can't verify that on my own, then I probably don't care about it. you know, you just have to become like really independent. But yeah, you got to be skeptical because every stock can sound pretty good. I mean, like, for instance, look at BBBY. I mean, now it's OTC because it went bankrupt, before having experienced this part of the cycle and seeing companies go bankrupt. It's like you can't even really imagine how that process even happens, right? But now it's like, wow, things got real, and I actually feel pretty I guess, honored and blessed to have started learning in this environment because it's an environment that I mean, like, it has people haven't even had the chance to learn it in their entire careers, right? So I'm like, I get to learn this so early on. It's kind of exciting because I think about Warren Buffett. What his that one quote? It's you can always when the tides go out, you see who's swimming naked. I mean, you see the same kind of thing happen even in just FinTwit space, right? So many fake people have just disappeared, less people talking. It's like, oh my gosh, you can tell what's real and what's not all of a sudden.
Do you have any sort of longer term plans or visions for sort of, let's call it your personal brand, right? So, stock mom, right? I mean, I can clearly envision a line of books that would be targeted towards children of mothers or of women that maybe have had similar experiences, to you, that are looking for somebody to look up to. Any sort of thoughts on what you'd ideally want to sort of position yourself into besides the portfolio management side?
I am just so much enjoying, I guess, my freedom. I got remarried in 2021. Wonderful partner. He is fantastic. We actually knew each other for a long time. We were actually both left in our relationships around the same time. It kind of just was serendipitous. We know each other's kids. It's great. Because of that, I mean, with my ex passing, my children get survivor benefits. I was able during 2020 to reassess, okay, do I even want to work anymore? I was just working retail management for a beauty company. And that was definitely not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I kind of pulled back. I'd, been working with my kids. My kids, are in therapy. I got through all my therapy. It was nice. But now it's like, I guess the world has opened up to me. It's like I could do whatever I want. And no one's stopping me. If anything, people are supporting me. And yeah, books. One day I definitely have books to write. I have a lot to say, but those will come. I think for me, it's just kind of further developing my education in finance. I am going to be starting back at school. I have a lot of random credits, and I'm just going to start putting them into an actual degree. And finance is what I love. That's what my brain does. I don't know if that means I'm going to do stuff on my own with it, like self-employment stuff, my own business, or if I'm going to go work, institutionally. I doubt that. I can't see myself doing that, but it just kind of feels like the next step for me is to go further my education. And yeah, I like to share that with other people and keep inspiring others to keep, following this journey. I think money is incredibly powerful. I mean, it is. Money is power. And if it's used in the right ways, it can be freedom for some people. So yeah, I'm going to keep working towards my goals of financial freedom and kind of keep sharing what I'm learning along the way.
I gotta ask you, it's time management is hard for a lot of people. I think especially challenging when you're effectively a full time mother, right, and having to deal with the 24/7 job of being a caretaker. How do you manage your own time in the context of the personal life with wanting to go back to school and self educating on investing? I got to imagine that. There's the old expression, right? If you want something done, give it to a busy person. But talk about just time management for yourself.
Well, that's a interesting story too. I used to be like actually really bad at time management. Being in fight or flight, dealing with adult ADHD, it was just never really growing up in a stable environment, I guess. But my husband, he's so wonderful. He is like, I always joke, I'm like, ah, you're so normal. You're like the most normal person I know. He knows that's a compliment. He's just very steady, I guess. He's been very good example for me. I just kind of followed his lead and everything kind of just fell into place. I mean, I don't know. I've gotten so good at time management over these past few years. Life just has a really nice rhythm. We all wake up in this house around like 6 a.m. and, he goes off to work. I get kids to school. So that's like a reason I got to be awake anyway. I get them to school. And then if it's a week I have video, I'm probably going to do that. But then I go and I do my Shipt and my Instacart. You got to manage your time for that too. But I don't know. I guess my husband is super supportive. Like, really, that's it. He is just very invested in the family. And he really just doesn't, I don't know. He doesn't really tell me how to be. And I love that. He's just there to be supportive. He's great like that. Plus, it helps. Our kids are getting older. My oldest, he is going on 12 now. My youngest, she is going to be 8 soon. So yeah, they're in school, and so I have all this time now.
What's your biggest piece of advice for newer traders that want to see this the way that you see it, as a way of leveling the playing field of life a bit, as a way of adding opportunities? What would you suggest people should be doing, or how should they be thinking about this business?
Well, I think first and foremost, just don't stop educating. I think that's like essential. The more I learn, the more I realize what's going on. I guess it's like such a big thing, the market and the economy and just everything. It's like you're not going to be able to just like read one book and understand every bit of it. I've accepted for myself that this is going to be probably a lifelong education, you know, so staying open to new perspectives is everything. But also just, you know, really being sure that you're getting good sources of information. Read books, don't just read uh, tweets, you know. Look for people who do have credentials behind them or do have a good track record. But I think first and foremost, they really got to be able to lean on their own education, because even if someone's saying something that may be true, if you can't figure out if that's true or not, then you're going to be really confused.
I think that's a good place to wrap this Twitter space up. Please show some support to Amanda. Follow her here on Twitter. Any other places that people can follow some of your content?
Yes, I have my YouTube. The link is on my Twitter page. So definitely give that a look over, guys. I do a monthly video and then I do weekly videos to kind of give an update of what's going on in the market.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm doing another Twitter space at 3 Eastern today. I'm sorry, 2 Eastern today with Michael Saylor as one of the main guests. Stay tuned for that. Amanda, real pleasure listening to you. I give you a lot of credit. You are a fighter, not just a survivor. And I think that's certainly an inspiring story. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'll see you soon. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Cheers, everybody.